in my last breaths, reflecting on things, if I could say to myself, I helped one person, I stopped one person from giving up or from taking their own life at the end of the day, that's what drives me.
And welcome everyone to another episode of Humanity 2.0 podcast, where we are talking to humans about humanity. Imagine that. Today's guest is Richard Williams, who is the founder of Really Healed. Now, Richard went through several lived experiences where there was trauma, there was addiction, and Richard eventually found himself at a turning point where he chose the path that led to where he is today. And we are going to explore that path and also ask Richard questions about humanity. We are so happy that you're here today, Richard. How are you today?
Thank you, Vanessa. Really good. Thank you. So I'm all the way over in Ireland, but maybe with this podcast, we might get a few people to tune into yourself. Really looking forward to it. I'm good.
Good. I'm a huge fan of Ireland. So Ireland people, please listen. I would love to have you. My biggest question today, first and foremost, is, are you a good human and why?
I try to be a good human. I pick progress over perfection because I don't think there's such thing as perfection. I don't place myself or anyone else up on a pedestal. So generally when I'm asked on a scale of 1 to 10, where do I see anything? I'll never give it past a 9 for the simple reason that I always believe there's room for improvement. So as in myself, I would say, yes, I'm a reasonably good human, but I do have my flaws and I fail occasionally. But I suppose when I learn from them and grow from it, that's progress. So I'm happy with that.
Excellent. And I believe that the work that you do, which we'll talk about a little bit more later, I think that automatically qualifies you as an excellent human because you are serving others and you're, just really offering something of value to humanity. So spoiler, but you're an awesome human.
Okay.
Now, we all have moments where another person or another soul reminds us of our shared humanness, whether it be an experience of empathy or something really kind that was done by someone else that just kind of struck you. Do you have a person that you automatically think of, and what's that story?
So I had a gentleman that helped me years and years ago, and I was struggling with addiction at the time. I was just tethering between trying to get sober and clean and start to behave myself. And he kind of done me a favor, I turned up to use the service that he worked in, and he went above and beyond for me. And there was no real reason why he would do that for me. And I was a bit taken aback by it. And so jokingly, I call him my guru, so even today, 20 years on, or 22 years on, I'm still great friends with him now. And he's my go-to. And he's a little bit like myself, where he's very real. He doesn't give me fluff. There's no cotton wool. He'll give me the truth between the eyes, whether I want it or not. But that's what I need. And I know that that's what I need. So that would be my go-to.
Yeah, those are the best kind of people. Now, I'm curious though, because people that we've known throughout different versions of ourselves, right? Different years, we change. And so did the conversations with that particular person change over the years, and how so?
Yeah, definitely. So I suppose it was a worker-client relationship at the start. Shortly after, I went off and I went into residential treatment for a long time, came back out, went to college, and coincidentally, if that's what you want to call it, crossed paths with him again. But I was coming in as a professional, so I just come out of college after studying addiction studies, and I arrived down to a particular service and was going in to see would they potentially have a place for me to go in and do some time for work experience, as I just finished college or was finishing up in college. And when the door opened, it was himself standing there. So we then became work colleagues. We then became close friends. And so I suppose I get a lot more truth out of him now than I used to in terms of directed towards me, So, he's not afraid of using a few expletives or a few not so soft words, but in the most loving way. And I think that's something I'd like to touch on later on is a little piece about love.
I would love that as well. Did you see anything different in him working with him as a colleague? Were there any imperfections that you saw or any like really great things that you saw in him when you were working alongside him?
Loads of different characteristics. So he was an open book, flaws and all. He had no problem opening up and sharing his own lived experience with me, his upbringing, where he'd come from, his own journey. And I thought it was, so I suppose when I went into work there, first he would have been my boss. He was able to work with me and teach me and guide me and help me and support me, but again in a very friendly and open way. And there was no blurring of the boundaries in terms of professionalism. But he showed me that people do care, and that it doesn't have to be very black and white in the workplace, that you can be a bit more relaxed and a bit more open and a bit friendly with each other. And that was okay. I suppose previous to that, Vanessa, I had tried to hide an addiction. I was a functioning addict. So I always kept up work and things like that. And, so I was wearing a mask all the time and had my guard up the whole time so that people wouldn't see what was really underneath. And, getting clean and sober was definitely a huge part, but learning to take the mask off and being comfortable with being myself, warts and all, was a huge turning point for me. So it had a great impact.
That makes me think about the moment that you decided to take off that mask. Like what is the moment for you where you decided to take it off and be out in the open?
It was a very slow process, Vanessa, and I suppose it happened incrementally because, if you're around family, you wear one mask. If you're around friends, you wear another mask. If you're in a professional setting, etc., etc. If I'm working with a client now, excuse me, I'm suffering with a bit of a head cold. But so we can tend to wear different masks in different settings depending on the environment. And it was learning that I didn't actually need to wear a mask anywhere. So, in that scenario, I suppose in the work setting, I learned to be able to take my mask off there. But then I learned as I progressed that, I can take my mask off when I'm in public. I can take my mask off around friends. I don't need to be hiding behind a certain persona or have a wall up, and that it's okay to be me. And I think that again ties into the self-love piece. It's okay to be me. I don't need to be faking anything. You hear the expression, fake it till you make it. But you don't have to. You can just be yourself.
I think that you are totally correct. We definitely wear different masks for sure. And sometimes we could get carried away in them. We might leave them on longer than we think. We get used to being a certain way, and then maybe we take that home and we're still that way for a while. So it's interesting to define, like, where is the boundary of where you become, your home self versus your work self? And then why are there even two to begin with? Why wouldn't you just be yourself anyway? Right. So
I believe it comes from what way you were brought up in childhood, So again, on paper, I had quite a privileged upbringing. So, there was table etiquette and, you couldn't have your elbows on the table and you had your cutlery laid out a certain way and you had to behave a certain way. And that was all instilled into me. And you're told that's the difference between right and wrong, or you're told to act a certain way. I would have heard as a child, children should be seen and not heard. So you couldn't express yourself. You couldn't be open. You couldn't be yourself. I mean, so that in itself was a type of mask. So from a very young age, all of us, regardless of our background or where we came from or what that looked like, to some description or another, we were wearing a mask. And then as we, I suppose, grew, that begin to change. You go to school, you behave a certain way. You play with your friends, you behave a certain way. There's certain family coming to visit, you behave a certain way. So, it's ingrained in us from a young age, and then learning to try and take that away, it can be a huge piece for some people.
Mm-hmm. Today's society often judges what it does not understand. Big shocker, right? What can you tell us about what we don't understand about humanity in Ireland?
The Irish people as a nation, everybody thinks they know the history. And to some degree they do. But the piece that's missing is that we get lumped in with everybody else. And I'm not big on pushing ethnicities or racism or anything like that. You know, I sat on a course a couple of years ago, and a lady said, "This course was developed for all you white colonials."
Mm.
And I sat there thinking, I'm not colonial. I'm Irish. And it made me really think about what it was to be Irish. You know, we don't use it that often, but we have our own language. We have our own culture. We were colonized instead of being colonials. We have our own art, our own music, and still have a lot of old traditions. We have our own sports, you know, so Gaelic football or hurling. So the Irish are always known as being very friendly and open and loving a good laugh and things like that. We're also notorious drinkers and things, but you know, to be Irish is not the same. It's not the same as other white people or other Europeans. We have our own culture. And that gets missed a lot, I think, you know, and I think that's unfortunate. And you know, I think what makes Irish different to other people is that piece. And actually the book I wrote is called Shadows of the Past, which is about Irish history and intergenerational trauma or epigenetics, how we have an inherent trauma from what happened in the past. So we were colonized, we were taken over by the Vikings, by the English, you know, by the Normans, and then we had a famine. So there was a consistent piece of multiple layers of trauma that happened there where we were so pressed for so long. And you generally wouldn't find anybody complain about it or even bring it up. But I think that's part of Irish culture as well. It's like, gosh, you don't need to talk about that, you know, don't mention the war, you know. And that's okay, but that's what makes us as a people, I suppose. And, you know, when I look at the United States, for example, and I see so many Irish and multiple of generations of Irish now, that was as a result of all those very things, you know. So we had a population of 8 million, 150 years ago, and there was a great famine in Ireland, the potato famine they call it, and we ended up with 3 million people left in the country that were alive. So whether they passed away or they emigrated or they were sent off in what were called the coffin ships, which was, if you make it to your destination, you're lucky, you know. So yeah, and I think, you know, I have a lot of friends in the US and a lot of Irish connections, I suppose, you know. We have a bit of fun around it, you know. I've a friend in Boston, and he uses the Irish for his name for Michael, you know, and he says, "My name is Mihal," and I'm like, "Way you, you know, you're not, that was your great grandmother that was Irish. You're American, you know."
Do the younger generations in Ireland still embrace tradition, or is it kind of like slipping away a little bit?
It is definitely slipping away, and you know, Ireland is now a multicultural society. You know, 30 years ago, it'd be rare to see a foreign national of many descriptions in the country. I remember as a child going to London, and I was just bemused, amazed by all the different nationalities. And I thought, wow, this is like an hour on an airplane away. It's not that far away, and how different it was. You know, the Dublin we have today, for example, the capital in Ireland, is the exact same. We have every shop, we have every restaurant, we have everything you would see in any other country. You know, whether it be London or New York or wherever it is, everything is accessible. You know, I mean, there's nothing we can't order on Amazon here, and it's here in a day. You know, but we've really opened up as a nation. And so I suppose there was a little bit of a worry in that would we lose some of our heritage? And I think that was a great question, but I think what's happened is it made some people clamp down more. No, we need to hold on to our history and be proud of it and to be able to show to others. And I'm not sure when this will air, but we're only a week and a half away from St. Patrick's Day, which will be celebrated all over the world.
Yeah, I hear that it's celebrated more everywhere else than Ireland. Is that true?
It's a big celebration here. It's a bank holiday here. Everything stops. And generally every town will have some form of a parade and, the arts and stuff come out and the music and things like that. So I look at Ireland and then I look at the USA. I have a friend in Texas and you could probably fit Ireland in Texas. And there's probably more people in Texas than there is in Ireland. And I think people abroad sometimes forget how small it is. I can drive from the very tip of the north of Ireland to the very south in 12 hours. I can do east to west in probably 6.
Yeah.
So there's nowhere that I can't get to within less than a day of travel. And so in terms of numbers, yeah, it's definitely celebrated a lot bigger. I'm thinking of stuff that might come up on the TV of St. Patrick's Day in New York or something, and the big parades and all the fire brigade out and the ambulance service and the band.
All the green beer and all that.
Yeah, and I'm like, wow, look at the size of that, But Dublin City Centre will have, probably 10, 12, 13, 15,000 people there. We get a lot of visitors for St. Patrick's Day.
Oh, I believe that. Yeah, 100%. I live in Texas, so
okay.
I can resonate with the driving takes hours upon hours to get out of here.
Yeah.
But, you can find just about anything in the state.
I suppose when you've grown up in Ireland, your brain doesn't comprehend that scale really until you go and witness it,
Can you tell us the why behind the work that you do and then tell us what you do?
So I suffered a couple of different types of abuse as a child. And there was sexual abuse, which happened on a foreign holiday. And there was a lot of physical abuse and verbal abuse at home. And that grew into an addiction in my mid-teens and late teens up into my late 20s. I also experienced a suicide in the family. So my father took his own life. He was an absolute gentleman. He was a great man. The reasons he done it, I put it down to a moment of madness. I certainly wouldn't have taken my life over the circumstances that he done it in, but he did. And I was left a very lost and broken person and really struggled with life. When I was able to come through all that and come out the other side, I so deeply wanted to be able to give that back to others. It was an eye-opener to see so many other people struggle with all aspects of life. From a socio-economic perspective or life experience perspective, or both, and what that is and what it looks like. And it sent me on a journey. I was never academic and I struggled with learning. I have dyslexia. And so I really struggled with that stuff. But what I realized was, and again, the joys of modern technology today. So on the start of my journey of turning my life around 20 years ago, I found a piece of software, CD-ROM, you put into your computer, and it was called Drag and Dictate. And I could put a headset on and it would type. So all I needed to do was talk and it would do. I thought it was doing the work for me. So when I thought I could never go to college because I never finished school, I thought it was an impossible thing at 30 years of age. And within 7 or 8 years, I had 2 degrees and a master's. And I was a bit stubborn and I still had a bit of a rebellious streak in me. So when somebody told me I couldn't do something, I wanted to do it to prove them wrong. And so that being mixed together, it started off volunteering in a homeless shelter. I had a sales job. I was doing okay. The money was okay, but I hated the job. And somebody kept asking me to volunteer in this homeless shelter, which I didn't really want to do. Or I thought I didn't until I said, if I just go once, they'll stop asking me, and I'll tell them I didn't like it. But I went and I loved it. And, I didn't realize the ins and outs of what homelessness looked like. I met every walk of life, lots of different people from different nationalities, different backgrounds, and heard lots and lots of different stories. You know, we have a stereotype of what somebody that's homeless might be, and it was a very different experience for me, and I thought I really liked this. And so that grew into going to college and studying homeless intervention and prevention and addiction studies and things like that.
Yeah.
And, as I progressed and went through my professional career, I got into counseling and different types of therapy to be able to give back and support. But on all of that journey, what I realized was as I was learning this academia to be able to help others, I had to apply it to myself first. So I kind of became my own therapist nearly, although there was lots of that along the way as well with people that had helped me. And so today, I have a company called Really Healed. We give life coaching, mentorship for people with life controlling issues. So we use a very person centered model. And I like to look at the person, figure out what it is that they're struggling with, which generally isn't the real issue. It's usually something else. It's something underneath that drives them to that, and be able to build a plan for them that works for them. So I worked in lots of different organizations that this is our method and this is what you have to use. I suppose whilst I worked for different organizations, I realized everybody's different, which fits exactly into this podcast with Humanity 2.0. We're all different. We all have different life experiences, and what might work for you won't work for somebody else. So to be able to keep an open mind with that, and there are times where I'm well able to put my hands up and say, maybe I'm not the right person for you, but I can advise you where to go here and give them the support with that. So I used lots of different tools. There's lots of trauma healing, bits of talk therapy, lots of breath work, all the different holistic tools that are available. And I do hypnotherapy as well. So it's reasonably well rounded for most life controlling issues.
Do you ever think about what motivated you to consistently hold space for other people and to help them?
Yes.
I'm kind of.
My father's business was classic and vintage cars. So I grew up in a garage. So he done sales, parts, restoration work, all that kind of stuff, supplied them for movies. And I remember working in the garage with my father, and I'd come back from a job I was working in at the time, and I was giving out to him about the job. And he said to me, son, go and find a job that you love and you'll never work another day in your life. And I didn't really fully grasp or understand at the time what he meant by that. But his whole life, he was in all the different car clubs. He was on committees. He'd go away for weekends with the old cars with his pals. And then that was his business as well. So it was clear to me that, his friends were based around that. His work was based around that. It was his hobby, his interest. He'd go to his house at 10 o'clock at night and he wouldn't be there. And you'd go down to the garage and there he'd be working away in the car. And you'd say to him, what are you doing? He'd say, I'm happy, this is what I love doing. And, I suppose my father took his own life, and suicide is a huge thing, and the impact that it has, not only on the family members, but his friends and the outside circle and, all of that. And I had considered it and attempted it myself when I was younger. But when I came through the far side, I realized the almost epidemic of not only life controlling issues, but mental health and suicide as well. And what I would give to have, if I was lying on my deathbed in the hospital in my last breaths and was reflecting on things, if I could say to myself, I helped one person, I stopped one person from giving up or from taking their own life, I'd be happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's it, at the end of the day. That's what drives me. That's what compels me. That's what, I love learning now. I love learning new things. I love being open-minded. I was a terrible skeptic for many, many years, very closed book. Where I'd believe in one methodology and nothing else could be right. And I was questioned on that many years ago and told, keep your eyes open, be open to things. People are different. And that's where that person-centered piece, I suppose, really came in. You don't have to have the same background as somebody or the same life experience or anything like that to be able to help and give back.
If you could share a message with humanity, and not counting the one you just gave, because it's almost exactly what I was going to ask, but any other message that you would share with humanity, what would that be?
Love. So the English language has done us an injustice. So if we look at different languages like Latin and Greek and Hebrew and different things like that, there's 7 different types of love. There's 7 different words that are used, and they describe all different types of love. And if love didn't exist, or the lack of love, drastic and bad things happen. It starts with self-love, because I need to be able to love myself first in order to love others. I can't pour from an empty cup. That's my strong belief on that. So self-love, it's part of the restoration process when somebody really wants to turn their life around. But there's all different types of love. There's a friendly love. There's a relationship love. There's a passionate love. There's loving the difficult to love. So it's okay to love people from a distance. It's okay to love people that you don't like. I remember going into a manager years ago and saying, that other staff member is driving me crazy, and he said, just love him. And I said, how can I love him? I don't like him. And he said, I didn't ask you to like him. I asked you to love him. And that led into a conversation, which when he said it to me initially, I didn't understand. And now I get exactly what he meant. By the time I'd finished the conversation, I knew what he meant. Give him a space, show him respect. You don't have to have the cheeky answer back to him, if he cuts across you or anything like that. And so love is a huge element of everything. And everybody deserves to be loved. I come across a lot of people that really, really struggle with love in loads of different ways. If I'm doing a piece of work with a single mother and she said, I haven't got time to do anything for myself. All I focus on is my 2 children. I really, really love them, and that's all that matters. And I'd say, well, do you do anything for yourself? Is there any self-love there? I haven't got time for that. I'm too busy. And, I would say to that, you can't pour from an empty cup. You have to be able to love yourself in order to love them. If you took a 2-hour break and went and got your nails done, or you went and got your hair done, or you went and gave yourself a little pamper treat, or you allow yourself a couple of hours to be able to switch off or go and watch a movie with your friends, how much happier would you be? And how much of an effect would that then have on the children, because you've spent a bit of time on yourself as well. So self-love is hugely important in order to be able to show love to others. Even in terms of, I suppose, forgiveness and things like that. Forgiveness isn't for the other person or to let them away with something that they've done to you. Forgiveness is for your benefit, so that I don't have to carry that baggage around with me. Somebody's done something to hurt you or something that has left you in a bad place. It's not a religious thing or a spiritual thing, although, in a lot of those areas, forgiveness would be a big topic. But for everybody, for humanity, forgiveness is so important for ourselves, so that we don't have to carry that baggage around with us. And part of that is learning to love the other person. We don't have to like them. We just have to be able to show them that piece of love. That's a compassionate love, as part of the forgiveness journey.
Can you tell everyone where to find your work and where to find you on social platforms?
Absolutely. So my website is reallyhealed.com, and I'm on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and LinkedIn. I think basically all of them under Really Healed.
Thank you so much for sharing your experiences and your work with us. The fact that we found each other on, what was it, Facebook, I think? You reached out and I was like, who is this cheeky fella? So I'm so glad that we got to meet.
Absolutely.
and share your perspective. It truly was an excellent experience, and thank you for all that you do. We'll be sure to list your website and anything else that you've gone over on the description. We'll put your links in there so everyone can find you. And I look forward to having Ireland also hear Humanity 2.0 and hope that we'll build this international humanity community. So thanks so much for being here, Richard.
Vanessa, if nobody told you today, Richard the Mouse Williams loves you.
Thank you. And for the rest of you guys watching and listening, thank you for being part of this Humanity 2.0 episode. We'll see you next week for another wonderful episode. Take care and don't forget to be good to other humans. Humanity 2.0 podcast is brought to you by Vanessa the Vivacious Productions. Want to be a guest? Visit the link in the episode description for future guest opportunities. Ready to podcast like a boss? Join Podmatch and begin your Podmatch journey via the link also listed in the description. Subscribe to Humanity 2.0 podcast on Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, and more. Follow and help support the show by buying Humanity a cup of coffee via buymeacupofcoffee.com/Humanity 2.0 podcast. Above all, don't forget to be good to other humans. See you guys next time.